Joining us on the line is David Limbaugh. He's author of the brand new book, Guilty by Reason of Insanity, already zooming up the bestseller charts. David, great to talk to you.
Ben, thanks for having me on.
You bet. So what's the thesis of the book? Obviously, the Democrats are in the midst of a collective insane bout, but what exactly is the thesis?
Just bottom line is they've gone over the deep end. Far left extremism would, if they had their way, if they regained control of the major political branches, the legislative and executive branches, I believe they will turn America into something the framers could not have possibly envisioned. And your kids and my kids will not live in an America that resembles anything that we inherited from our parents.
So where is all of this coming from? It's been obvious for years, obviously. You've been covering this stuff for decades, ever since the Clinton administration, that the left is moving left. But there does seem that at some point there was a full-on break from reality for a lot of folks on the left, and that has taken over the Democratic Party. I mean, by contrast with Barack Obama, these people even appear to be far left.
Yes, however, he seems to have enabled them. I kind of think that I've thought through this a lot, and one seminal or pivotal event to me is when he finally came out of the closet, figuratively speaking, and said that he now, after having pretended to be ambivalent about same-sex marriage, he's now wholeheartedly for it. And all of a sudden, if you notice, even though the public didn't really support it, even in referenda up until that time, now all of a sudden it was overnight, everyone believed it. No one dared say anything else. And that seemed to usher in a new period of extremism. He also introduced socialism light with Obamacare. He made these things thinkable and doable in American politics in ways that they hadn't been done before. And of course, I go into how FDR and LBJ introduced socialism themselves, but this was a bolder introduction. And I think now Democrats, with their rabid base, are also emboldened to come out and be more liberal, more radical. And now it's almost like they're feeding off each other in a frenzied state. And their base is driving it, and they're in an echo chamber, and they're demonstrating themselves to be more and more radical. I can't put my finger on it. Those are just some things that have occurred to me about the turn.
So looking at the Democratic field, there is this bizarre gap right now in which Joe Biden is leading in the national polls. The person who has, of course, the media's adoration is Elizabeth Warren, followed closely by Bernie Sanders. It seems like by polling data, a lot of Democrats, particularly in the middle of the country, are really off-put by the radical leftism of the Democratic Party, including on some of the more radical social issues. But they simply have no place to turn. They're turning to Joe Biden, and Biden is just too weak a candidate to support them. So where do you think the Democratic Party is going? And do you see any hope inside the Democratic Party for a base that is rejecting some of the more overtly extreme policies pursued by their candidates?
Well, I agree with you that Biden is weak, and I think increasingly incompetent and feeble, and also will just say whatever he needs to say to make himself more palatable to the left. Demagogue, chameleon. He's going nowhere. However, he's much saner than the rest of them on paper, and though that's why he's got a plurality, I think. But I think Warren would be the head right now. But I think it's so weak that someone like Bloomberg, Hillary Clinton, not Hillary. I don't think Hillary, because she's too feeble physically, and they tried to cover that up. But I could see Michelle Obama coming out of the woodwork. She's the one that really scares me. But I cannot imagine this crop of Democrats being as crazy as they are. But one thing I will tell you, and I don't know your experience, half of my law partners are Democrats, really good people. We live in the Midwest, in a county that is overwhelmingly Republican, and yet these Democrats who don't subscribe to those values, I guarantee you every one of them will vote for a Democratic candidate no matter how radical. And that's a curious phenomenon. They're going to vote for him anyway. And so they say, well, they're not that radical, but as a practical matter, they might as well be, because they will vote for him. Most of them will.
Well, David, do you think that that's a referendum on just how much Democrats hate Republicans at this point? Is this just a reaction to Trump, in other words? How much of this is authentically driven by radical priorities, and how much of this is driven by hatred of Trump and Trump derangement syndrome?
Okay, that's really a good question, because you put a different spin on it that I've thought. I have considered, when I'm answering this question in interviews, I've done a lot of thinking about this. I don't think it's just Trump. I think that the left, the media, academia, has indoctrinated the rank and file Democrats and minorities into believing that conservatives are evil. You look at the polls, we're considered by an overwhelming majority of blacks to be racist. We are now. It makes it easier for them because Trump is a border hawk, and he can be easily associated with racism in that sense because they attribute that to racism when it isn't. And they also have fully convinced, and they've been working on this for decades, they've convinced Democrats that conservatives are evil, not just racist, but evil, uncompassionate, and capitalism. It's not that socialism is great, it's that capitalism is evil and capitalists are evil. And that's, by the way, I think accounts for the rabid anti-Semitism on the left. Why? Because capitalism is the greatest evil. Jews are perceived to be capitalists. And so that, I think that's the logical nexus there.